Think about the US dollar. It's a green piece of paper, right? But what if I told you that this one currency, this greenback, is the single most powerful tool in the world? It's not the biggest military or the most advanced technology. It's the financial muscle that underpins it all. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on how the US achieved this incredible power. This is a story of global conflict, a secret pact, and a few key decisions that reshaped the entire planet's economy. Get ready, because the numbers here are the dollar, how it conquered the world, the Great War and the Golden Handover, 1900 to 1944. To understand how the dollar became king, we have to go back to a time when it was a mere prince. In the early 20th century, the global reserve currency was the British pound sterling, backed by the colossal might of the British Empire. But then, the world was plunged into a financial nightmare that would last for 3 decades. World War I. Europe was an inferno, and the cost of that war was simply staggering. The US, positioned safely across the Atlantic, became the world's primary creditor. To fund their war efforts, the Allied powers, especially Britain and France, had to liquidate assets and, most importantly, ship their gold reserves to the United States to pay for war materials. Over the course of the war, the US lent out a massive $10 billion to the Allies. The sheer scale of this transfer was unprecedented. By 1920, the US was no longer just a big economy. It was now the world's biggest creditor. But the real game changer was World War II. While Europe was once again being torn apart, the US ramped up its industrial production to an unbelievable degree. It became the arsenal of democracy. From 1940 to 1945 alone, US military spending soared to over $300 billion. Adjusted for inflation, that's an almost incomprehensible $4.1 trillion in today's money. The US was making planes, tanks, and ships at a rate the world had never seen, and once again, our allies paid in gold. By the end of the war, the US held a mind-boggling 75% of the world's total monetary gold supply, valued at over $20 billion at the time. Can you feel the power in that figure? It's not just a number. It's the physical foundation of global finance. The entire world's wealth was now sitting in US vaults. This created a new kind of fear and a new kind of opportunity. The war was over, but the world was economically shattered. What was going to happen now? Think about that. Now let's get to the boardroom, where the new world order was born. The Bretton Woods Pact and the dollar's coronation, 1944 to 1971. In 1944, with the war not yet over, representatives from 44 allied nations gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The goal was to build a stable financial system from the wreckage of war. The US, with its unparalleled wealth, came to the table with a plan. The agreement they hammered out was brilliant in its simplicity and breathtaking in its ambition. The Bretton Woods system did 2 things. First, it pegged all other major currencies, like the British pound and the French franc, to the US dollar at a fixed rate. Second, and this is the crucial part, it pegged the US dollar itself to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. The US was the only country that made this promise. The dollar wasn't just a currency anymore. It was the anchor of the entire global financial system. The US had just been handed the ultimate exorbitant privilege. Every single central bank in the world needed dollars to conduct international trade. This created a colossal, permanent demand for the dollar. And the US put its money where its mouth was. Through the Marshall Plan, the US funneled over $13 billion, the equivalent of over $150 billion today, into rebuilding war-torn Europe. This wasn't just foreign aid, it was a strategic distribution of US dollars, cementing their status as the medium of global exchange. For nearly 3 decades, this system brought a period of unprecedented stability and growth. But there was a growing problem. As the US began spending more and more on things like the Vietnam War, its national debt ballooned from $260 billion in 1950 to over $380 billion by 1970. The world was now holding so many dollars that the US's gold supply, while still massive, wasn't enough to back them all up. Fear began to creep in. The Nixon shock and the Petrodollar Pact, 1971 to 2025. By the late 1960s, countries started to get a little suspicious. What if the US didn't have enough gold to redeem all those dollars? What would happen then? The French, led by President Charles de Gaulle, were particularly vocal about this. And they started to exchange their dollars for gold, draining US reserves. The moment of truth came in August 1971. President Richard Nixon, faced with a severe balance of payments crisis and the real threat of a global run on US gold, made a shocking announcement. He unilaterally and temporarily suspended the convertibility of the US dollar into gold. This was famously called the Nixon shock, and it killed the Bretton Woods system overnight. The world was sent into a panic. The global financial system had just lost its anchor. Currencies began to float freely, and the value of the dollar plummeted. It looked like the end of the dollar's reign. But again, the US had a brilliant and ruthless solution. This solution came from a crisis of a different kind, the 1973 OPEC oil embargo. Arab nations, in retaliation for US support of Israel, stopped shipping oil to the US, causing prices to skyrocket. This created a new kind of financial anxiety. In the midst of this chaos, US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger flew to Saudi Arabia and struck a deal. In exchange for massive military protection and a steady flow of arms, Saudi Arabia would agree to two things. First, it would sell its oil exclusively in US dollars. And second, it would invest its immense oil profits back into US debt and assets. This new Petrodollar system was the perfect replacement for the gold standard. Every country that needed to buy oil, which, let's be honest, is every country in the world, now had to acquire US dollars first. This created a guaranteed, and that is the world we live in today. The US dollar still accounts for approximately 58% of global currency reserves, a total value of over $6.6 trillion. It's used in over 88% of all foreign exchange transactions. Its dominance is so complete that it gives the US the unique power to impose sanctions and influence global politics in a way no other country can. So, the next time you see a US dollar, remember its incredible journey. It's not just a piece of paper. It's the symbol of a century-long, multi-billion-dollar master plan that made one country the financial superpower of the world. I hope that deep dive into the history of the US dollar was as eye-opening for you as it was for me. If you found these numbers and figures absolutely mind-blowing, and you want to understand more about the hidden forces that shape our finances, then you know what to do. Hit that like button to help this video reach more people. And for more stories about money, power, and history, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.